Kate Morrison opened her eyes to a world of blue light and crystal walls. Her head felt heavy, and her thoughts moved slowly like water through sand. She tried to remember how she got here, but everything was blank after the explosion on her ship. The last clear memory was pressing the emergency jump button, and then white light. Everywhere she sat up and looked at her hands. They were covered in strange metal armor that she did not recognize. The armor had silver patterns that glowed softly in the dim light. When she touched the patterns, they felt warm and alive somehow. This was not her uniform. This was not anything from Earth. The cell around her was made of clear crystal that hummed with energy. Beyond the walls, she could see a forest, but it was wrong. The trees had purple leaves, and the sky was too dark, even though light came from somewhere. Kate stood up and her legs felt strange and strong, like she had been sleeping for a long time. A sound made her turn quickly. Someone was walking toward the crystal cell. Kate pressed herself against the far wall and watched as a figure came closer through the purple forest. It was a woman, but not human. She had long silver hair that moved like water, and her ears came to sharp points. Her eyes were violet, and they looked at Kate with something like recognition. The elf woman raised one hand, and the crystal wall dissolved into light particles. Kate wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The woman stepped inside and spoke in a language Kate did not understand. Then she touched her own throat and spoke again. This time Kate heard the words clearly in her mind. "You are awake finally. I have waited 3 cycles for you to open your eyes." Kate backed away further. The woman did not seem hostile, but she was clearly not human. Her armor was made of dark leather and metal that seemed to grow from her body rather than sit on top of it. A sword hung at her side that glowed with purple light. "Who are you, and where am I?" Kate thought hard, hoping the woman would hear. The elf woman smiled slightly. "I am Seraphine, and you are in my world now. You came through a tear in the sky 3 cycles ago. Your metal bird fell from the stars and crashed in the Shadowlands. I found you in the wreckage wearing this armor that I do not recognize." Kate looked down at her armor again. She did not remember putting it on. She did not remember crashing. Everything after the jump was just empty space in her mind. Seraphine moved closer, and Kate tensed. The elf woman held out her hand palm up in what seemed like a peace gesture. On her palm was a mark that glowed the same silver color as the patterns on Kate's armor. Kate looked at her own hand and saw an identical mark had appeared on her skin beneath the armor. "We are bonded now," Seraphine said in Kate's mind. "The ritual completed when you touched my blood at the crash site. You do not remember, but I carried you from the wreckage, and your hand pressed against my wound. The old magic recognized you as my shield sister." Kate shook her head. She did not understand any of this. Shield sister and bonded and old magic were not things that made sense. She was a pilot from Earth. She fought in a war against machines, not magic. Before Kate could think of what to say, a massive shape moved in the purple forest. She looked past Seraphine and saw something enormous coming closer. It was a dragon. Kate had seen pictures of dragons in old stories, but nothing prepared her for the reality. The creature was as big as her crashed ship had been. Its scales were deep red like fire, and its eyes were golden and ancient. The dragon lowered its huge head and looked directly at Kate. She felt its mind touch hers like Seraphine's voice, but deeper and older. Images flooded into Kate's thoughts. She saw wars between dimensions. She saw beings of pure shadow eating entire worlds. She saw herself standing in armor made of starlight holding back darkness with her bare hands. Kate fell to her knees from the weight of the visions. Seraphine was beside her, immediately helping her stay upright. The dragon pulled back its mind and Kate could breathe again. "That is Ashka," Seraphine said gently. "He has lived for thousands of your years, and he sees things that mortals cannot. He shows you what is coming." "What is coming?" Kate asked in her thoughts. "War," Seraphine said simply. "A war that will destroy everything unless we can stop it. The Shadow Princes are attacking from the broken dimensions. They corrupt and consume all living things. My people have fought them for decades, but we are losing ground every cycle." Kate stood up slowly with Seraphine's help. Her military training started to take over despite the impossible situation. If there was a war, then there were tactics and strategies. If there was an enemy, then there were ways to fight. "Why do you need me?" Kate asked. "I am just one soldier from another world." Seraphine looked at her with those strange violet eyes. "Because you are immune to them. At the crash site, the Shadow Princes attacked us. Their power turns reality into nightmare and corrupts the mind. I was falling to their influence when you woke for just a moment. You touched one of them, and it dissolved into nothing. Whatever you are now, you can hurt them when we cannot." Kate processed this information. She had powers she did not understand in a world she did not know, fighting enemies she had never heard of. But she was a soldier, and soldiers adapted to new situations. That was what humans did best. "Where do we go now?" Kate asked. "To the Moonspire Citadel," Seraphine said, "to meet the Queen. She has questions for you, and you will have questions for her. But first we must cross the Shadowlands, and that journey will not be easy. The enemy knows you are here now. They will try to stop us." Kate looked at the massive dragon and then at the elf warrior who claimed to be her bonded sister. She looked at her own hands covered in alien armor that glowed with power she did not understand. Everything about this was impossible, but Kate had learned long ago that impossible just meant no one had done it yet. She nodded once to Seraphine. "Then we should start moving. In my world we have a saying, 'The best defense is a good offense.' If they want to stop us, then we make them work for it." Seraphine smiled for real this time. It was a warrior's smile full of sharp edges. "I think I am going to like having a human shield sister. Come, Ashkor will carry us above the danger for as long as he can. After that, we fight on foot." Kate climbed onto the dragon's back behind Seraphine. The scales were warm under her hands, and she could feel the creature's immense power thrumming through its body. As Ashkor spread his wings and launched into the dark sky, Kate looked down at the purple forest disappearing below. She was far from home, and maybe she would never get back. But right now, there was a mission, and people who needed help. That was enough. Kate Morrison had always been good at her job, and her job was fighting. It did not matter if the enemy was machines or shadows or things from nightmares. Humanity had survived worse and come out stronger. She would too. The flight on Ashkor's back showed Kate the true scope of the war below. They passed over cities that had once been beautiful, but now lay in ruins. The buildings were made of crystal and living wood, but shadow had corrupted them. Black tendrils grew through the structures like disease, and the ground looked sick and wrong. Seraphine pointed to different locations as they flew. That was the city of Silverleaf. 10,000 souls lived there before the Shadow Princes came. Now it is empty. The people either died or became servants of Shadow. We tried to save them, but we were too late. Kate watched refugees moving in long lines below. They looked like ants from this height, but she could see they were elves fleeing from something. Small groups of warriors tried to protect them, but shadow creatures attacked from the corrupted forests. The battles were brief and brutal. "Can we help them?" Kate asked through the mind link. "Ashkor cannot land in shadow territory without risk," Seraphine said. "But you are right that we should try." Hold tight, the dragon dove suddenly, and Kate gripped the scales harder. They came down fast near one group of refugees being attacked by creatures made of living darkness. The shadow beasts had too many limbs and faces that shifted between different nightmare forms. Kate jumped from Ashkor's back before they fully landed. Her body moved on instinct and training. She had fought in close combat before, and her muscles remembered even if her mind was still confused about the armor. She ran at the nearest shadow creature, and when her armored fist connected with it, the thing dissolved into smoke. The elf warrior stared at her in shock. Shadow creatures did not dissolve. They reformed after every attack. But Kate touched another one, and it vanished the same way. Within moments, she had cleared a path for the refugees to escape. Seraphine fought beside her with grace that Kate admired even in the chaos. The elf warrior's sword cut through shadow like it was paper, and her movements were faster than human eyes could track. Together they pushed back the attack, and the refugees ran for safer ground. One of the elf warriors approached after the fight. He was tall, even for an elf, and his armor showed many repairs from previous battles. He looked at Kate with suspicion and wonder mixed together. "What manner of being are you?" he asked. "No elf can dissolve shadow with bare hands. She is my shield sister," Seraphina said firmly. "That is all you need to know, Captain. Get your people to safety. We ride for Moonspire." The captain bowed slightly, but his eyes stayed on Kate. She could feel his curiosity and fear. She was used to being feared by enemies, but being feared by the people she was trying to help felt wrong. They flew on, and Seraphine began to tell her story. Kate listened as the elf warrior described her past life. Seraphine had been the queen's personal assassin, trained to hunt threats to the kingdom. She specialized in tracking dimensional breaches where things from other worlds came through. 5 years ago, by elf reckoning, Seraphine's entire unit was sent to investigate a massive breach in reality. They found shadow creatures pouring through from somewhere else. The battle lasted 3 days and nights. Seraphine watched her friends die one by one until she was the only survivor. She escaped, but barely, and the guilt had haunted her ever since. The timeline matched when Kate's ship had jumped through the experimental wormhole. 5 years in this dimension, but Kate had only experienced moments between the jump and waking up in the crystal cell. Time worked differently between worlds. Ashkor sent images into Kate's mind again. She saw the dragon as a young creature thousands of years ago. He had been born in a place between dimensions where reality was thin. His kind were guardians who kept the boundaries between worlds stable. But most of his kind had died in ancient wars, and he was one of the last. The dragon showed her a vision of what he was waiting for. A being from outside who could bridge the gap between magic and something else. A catalyst who would change everything. Kate understood then that her arrival was not random. Ashkor had been waiting for someone like her, even if he did not know exactly what form that someone would take as they got closer to Moonspire Citadel. The land became less corrupted. There were still signs of war, but the shadow had not taken over completely. Kate saw elf warriors training in camps and farmers trying to grow food in fields protected by magical barriers. Life continued even in the face of destruction. The citadel itself was magnificent. It rose from the ground like a mountain of white stone and crystal. Towers reached toward the dark sky, and bridges of light connected different sections. At the very top was a spire that glowed silver like a moon. Kate had never seen architecture like this, and for a moment she forgot about the war and just stared. They landed in a courtyard, where hundreds of elves waited. Kate felt all their eyes on her as she climbed down from Ashkor. She tried to stand with confidence like she had when inspecting troops back home. First impressions mattered, especially when you were the strange alien in magical armor. Seraphine led her through corridors of living crystal that hummed with power. Other elves moved aside and whispered as they passed. Kate caught words she understood through the mental. Translation: human, outsider, weapon, champion. They did not know what to make of her. The throne room was massive and filled with light despite the dark sky outside. Hundreds of elf warriors and nobles stood watching. At the far end, on a throne made of crystal and silver vines, sat the queen. Celestine was beautiful in a way that made Kate uncomfortable. Her beauty was too perfect, like a statue come to life. Her hair was white like starlight, and her eyes were pale blue that seemed to see through everything. She wore robes that moved like water and a crown of living crystal that grew from her head. Kate and Seraphine walked forward, and Seraphine bowed deeply. Kate was not sure what protocol to follow, so she nodded respectfully but did not bow. She was not a subject of this queen, and she would not pretend otherwise. The queen studied Kate for a long moment. The room was completely silent. Kate could feel the tension like a physical weight. Finally, the queen stood and descended from her throne. She walked across the floor with footsteps that made no sound. She came closer and closer until she was standing directly in front of Kate. Then, Queen Celestine leaned close, and her voice was a whisper that somehow everyone could hear. "I know who you really are, human. You are not lost. You are the weapon we summoned." Kate felt the words hit her like cold water. Summoned, not crashed by accident, but pulled here deliberately. She looked at Seraphine, but the elf warrior's face showed surprise. She had not known either. The queen stepped back and spoke louder for the court. 5 years ago, we performed a ritual forbidden by ancient law. We tried to summon a champion from the old legends, a being of pure light who could push back the shadow. The ritual required immense power and sacrifice. It consumed 3 of our greatest mages and tore a hole between dimensions. Kate's hands clenched into fists. Her crew, her ship. Everything she lost was because of this ritual. But the ritual failed, the queen continued. We did not summon our legendary champion. We summoned you. A human from a world of metal and science. A soldier who knew nothing of magic. The spell was supposed to bring us salvation, but instead it brought confusion. The court murmured, and Kate could feel their disappointment. She was not what they wanted. She was not their perfect hero from legends, however, the queen said, and her voice cut through the noise. You are something the ritual could never have predicted, because you should not exist here. You have become immune to the very thing we fight. Shadow cannot touch you. Reality warping does not affect you. You are a paradox, and that paradox is our greatest advantage. Queen Celestine turned to address the full court. I offer this human a choice. Help us win this war knowing you can never return home. Use your nature as a weapon against our enemies. Or I will send you back now through great effort and cost, and we will face the shadow. Princes alone, Kate thought about Earth. She thought about the war against machines that she had left behind. She thought about her crew who were probably dead in the wormhole explosion. Going home meant going back to nothing. But there was a third option. Kate could feel it at the edges of her mind, where Ashkor's thoughts touched hers. The dragon showed her a vision. If she stayed and fought, there might be a way to bridge both worlds. Save this dimension, and potentially save Earth too from whatever threats came next. The cost would be high. Kate could see that in the vision. She would change into something neither human nor elf. She would give up her humanity to become a guardian like Ashkor. But millions of lives hung in the balance. Kate looked at Seraphine, who was watching her with those violet eyes. The elf warrior had told her story of survival and guilt. She had fought for years while her friends died. Kate understood that kind of burden. I am not your weapon, Kate said clearly. But I am a soldier, and soldiers fight when people need protecting. I will stay and help you. Not because you summoned me, but because it is the right thing to do. The queen smiled slightly. Then let us discuss how a human fights a war of magic and shadow. Kate refused to be the queen's weapon, but she had a better idea. For 3 days, she studied how the elves fought their war. She watched training sessions and read tactical reports that Seraphine translated. The elves were brave and powerful, but they fought with honor and tradition. That made them predictable. The Shadow Princes knew every move before it. Happened because elves had fought the same way for thousands of years. Direct assaults, defensive formations, magical duels. It was like watching ancient warfare with no adaptation. Kate called a meeting with the Queen's War Council. The elf generals were old and set in their ways. They looked at her with barely hidden contempt, a human child trying to teach them about war. But the queen had ordered them to listen, so they sat in silence. Your enemy is winning because you fight fair, Kate told them bluntly. Honor does not matter when your people are dying. You need to stop thinking like nobles and start thinking like survivors. One general stood up angrily. We are not barbarians. We do not use deception and cowardly tactics. Kate stared at him until he sat back down. Then you will lose, and your honor will mean nothing to the dead. I come from a world where we fought enemies who had better weapons and more numbers. We won because we adapted. We used surprise. We hit weak points. We made the enemy afraid. She laid out a plan that made the generals uncomfortable. Small strike teams instead of large armies. Night raids on shadow strongholds. Sabotage of enemy supply lines if they had such things. Psychological warfare to make the Shadow Princes uncertain. Every dirty trick humanity had learned in centuries of conflict. Queen. Celestine listened carefully, and when Kate finished, the queen nodded slowly. Your methods lack honor, but I see the wisdom. We have fought with tradition and lost ground for decades. Perhaps it is time to try something new. The Queen gave Kate authority to form an elite unit. The vanguard would be volunteers who are willing to abandon traditional elf warfare. Seraphine immediately joined and brought warriors she trusted. They were soldiers who had lost too much and were angry enough to try anything. Training the vanguard was challenging. Elves moved faster and hit harder than humans, but they thought in straight lines. Kate taught them to be unpredictable, to retreat when winning, to draw enemies into traps, to use terrain and darkness instead of standing proud in open combat, to fight as a team where each member covered another's weakness. Seraphine was her second in command, and together they built something new. Magic combined with tactics, speed combined with strategy. The other elves called them dishonored, but the vanguard called themselves survivors. Their first mission was a test. Intelligence reported a shadow stronghold in a collapsed dimension. It was a place where reality had broken down and shadow creatures gathered. No elf force had successfully raided it before. Kate planned to change that. They used Ashcore to navigate the broken reality. The dragon could sense where dimensions were stable enough to walk. Kate, Seraphine, and 20 vanguard soldiers entered the collapsed space wearing armor Kate had designed. It combined elf magic with human tactical gear concepts. The shadow stronghold was a fortress of nightmares. Walls that screamed when touched. Towers that existed in 3 places at once. Guards made of pure darkness that felt no pain. But Kate had learned their weakness. They could not corrupt what should not exist in their reality. She led the charge directly while the vanguard flanked from impossible angles, using the broken dimension's strange geometry. Shadow creatures dissolved when Kate touched them, and the vanguard learned to use her as a living shield. They pushed deeper into the fortress than any elf had gone before. At the heart of the stronghold, they found something unexpected. A machine. It was partly organic and partly crystal, and it pulsed with dark energy. This was what kept the stronghold stable. Kate recognized technology even when mixed with magic. She knew how to break things. The vanguard held off shadow reinforcements, while Kate and Seraphine destroyed the machine. When it shattered, the entire fortress began collapsing. They ran back through breaking reality, with shadow creatures falling apart around them. Ashcore waited at the extraction point, and they escaped as the collapsed dimension folded in on itself. Back at Moonspire, the success was celebrated, but Kate felt wrong. Her body ached in ways that had nothing to do with combat injuries. That night, she looked in a mirror and saw runes appearing on her skin. They matched the patterns on her armor and on Ashcore's scales. Seraphine found her staring at her changing body. The elf warrior touched one of the runes gently, and Kate felt power surge at the contact. "This is the cost," Seraphine said quietly. "This world's magic is changing you. You are adapting to survive here, but adaptation means transformation." Kate had expected this, but seeing it happen was different. The runes spread across her shoulders and down her arms. When she concentrated, she could see magic flows in the air like heat waves. She could sense Ashcore even when the dragon was miles away. Stranger still, she sometimes saw through his eyes without meaning to. The elf healers examined her and whispered in concerned voices. Her body was accepting magic at a rate that should be impossible. Human bodies were not built for this. She should be dead or insane. Instead, she was becoming something new. Seraphine stayed close during the transformation. Their bond as shield sisters deepened into something more complex. Kate found herself thinking about the elf warrior constantly. About her graceful movements, about her fierce loyalty, about the sadness hidden behind violet eyes. One night after another, successful mission Seraphine confessed something that changed everything. "I volunteered for the summoning ritual. I offered my life force to power it. The mages said it would kill me, but I did not care. I had already lost everyone I loved in the war. Dying to save others seemed like a good ending." Kate listened as Seraphine continued. "But the ritual succeeded in pulling you through. My life force bonded with yours in the process. That is why I survived when the mages died. That is why we can communicate without words. That is why your transformation affects me too." She pulled back her sleeve and Kate saw faint runes appearing on Seraphine's skin. They were connecting in ways neither fully understood. Two beings from different worlds becoming something combined? Kate reached out and took Seraphine's hand. Their runes glowed brighter at the contact. I do not know what we are becoming, but we face it together. That is what Shield Sisters do. Their moment was interrupted by urgent alarms. The Vanguard was called to the War Council immediately. Intelligence had discovered something terrible in the data recovered from the Shadow Stronghold. Kate listened with growing horror as the information was revealed. The Shadow Princes were not invaders. They were refugees. They were fleeing from something worse. Something called the Unmaker that existed in deeper dimensions. It consumed entire realities and erased them from existence completely. The Shadow Princes had survived by accepting corruption, trading their souls for the power to run, but the Unmaker followed their trail. It was coming toward this dimension and toward the breach that led to Kate's homeworld. Both dimensions were in danger from something far worse than shadow creatures. The room erupted in panic. If the Shadow Princes were refugees, then the war was meaningless. Everything they fought for would be destroyed by the Unmaker anyway. Some generals called for surrender. Others demanded they fight harder. The Queen sat silent, trying to process this information. Kate stood up, and her voice cut through the chaos. We need to talk to them. The Shadow Princes. If they are running from the Unmaker, then they know things we do not. Information is a weapon. The court called her insane. Negotiate with the enemy that had killed thousands. But the Queen looked at Kate thoughtfully. You speak of desperate tactics, human. Is this another one? Kate nodded. Yes. In my world, we learned that sometimes your enemy's enemy can become your ally. The Unmaker threatens everyone. Maybe the Shadow Princes can be convinced to work with us instead of against us. The risk was enormous. The Shadow Princes might kill any diplomatic party. They might use it as a trap. But doing nothing meant facing the Unmaker divided. Queen Celestine made the decision that would change everything we try. Send a message to the Shadow Princes. Tell them we wish to talk. If they agree, Kate Morrison and Seraphine will lead the delegation. Ashkor will ensure safe passage. Kate looked at Seraphine, who nodded firmly. They had faced impossible odds before. This was just another mission. But as they prepared, Kate felt her runes pulse with warning. Her body was still changing, and each day she felt less human. She wondered how much of herself would remain when this war finally ended. The message was sent through channels Kate did not fully understand. Magic and dimensional signals combined to reach the Shadow Princes. For 3 days, there was no response, and Kate used the time to prepare. If this was a trap, she wanted to be ready to fight their way out. On the 4th day, a response came. The Shadow Princes agreed to meet in neutral territory, a dead world floating between dimensions where neither side had advantage. The terms were simple: 3 representatives from each side. No armies. No weapons beyond what they carried. Queen Celestine argued against Kate going personally, but Kate refused to send others into dangers she would not face. Seraphine would not let Kate go without her. Ashkor was the only one who could navigate to the meeting point. The 3 of them would represent the elves and humanity. The court was divided. Half believed Kate was corrupted by Shadow already. The other half saw her as the only one strange enough to communicate with the enemy. Kate ignored both groups and focused on the mission. Talking was just another form of combat. You sized up your opponent and looked for weaknesses. The journey to the dead world was unsettling. Ashkor flew through spaces that should not exist. Kate saw dimensions layered on top of each other like transparent paper. Reality was thinner here, and she could feel the void pressing in from all sides. Her runes burned with protective magic that kept her stable. The dead world appeared suddenly. It was a sphere of gray rock floating in nothing. No atmosphere. No life. Just emptiness. Ashkor landed, and Kate felt magic wrap around her, providing air and pressure. Seraphine's hand found hers and squeezed once. 3 figures waited on the opposite side of the landing area. They looked like elves, but wrong. Their skin was gray, and veins of darkness showed beneath the surface. Their eyes were completely black with no whites. Shadow corruption had changed them, but Kate could still see the people they used to be. The central figure stepped forward and spoke in a voice that echoed strangely. "I am Lauren Vale. I was human once like you, Kate Morrison. That was 300 years ago, before my world was consumed." Kate felt shock hit her hard. Human, the Shadow Prince was human. She studied Lauren and saw the truth in her corrupted features. This woman had been a soldier or explorer who faced the Unmaker and survived by becoming something else. Lauren gestured to her companions. "These are my lieutenants. We speak for the Shadow Princes who number in the thousands across many corrupted dimensions. We know why you came. You discovered we are fleeing, not conquering." Seraphine spoke carefully. "Why attack us if you are running? Why not ask for help?" Lauren laughed bitterly. "Would you have helped us if we asked? Would you have welcomed shadow-corrupted refugees into your pristine realm? We have tried peaceful contact with 30 dimensions. All 30 attacked us on sight. So we learned to take what we need and move on." Kate understood the logic even if she hated it. Fear made people cruel. The elves saw monsters and never looked deep enough to see the desperate survivors underneath. But understanding did not solve the current problem. "Tell us about the Unmaker," Kate said. "Everything you know." Lauren sat down on the gray rock and gestured for them to do the same. It was surreal, sitting in a circle like they were having a casual conversation, instead of a diplomatic meeting that could save or doom dimensions. "The Unmaker is not a being in any sense, you understand," Lauren began. "It is entropy given consciousness. It exists in the deepest dimensions where reality breaks down completely. We do not know if it was always there or if something created it. All we know is that it ungears." She described how the Unmaker moved through dimensions, erasing them. Not destroying, erasing. The difference was important. Destruction left ruins and memories. Erasure meant those dimensions never existed at all. Everyone who lived there forgotten. Every achievement meaningless. Complete oblivion. The Shadow Princes survived by accepting corruption. They traded their humanity and their souls for the ability to exist partially outside reality. It made them immune to erasure, but at a terrible cost. They could never go back to what they were. They could never stop running. "But you are different, Kate Morrison," Lauren said, leaning forward. "Ashkor confirmed it when we sensed your arrival. You exist in a quantum state, neither fully part of this dimension nor separate from it. You are a paradox that should not be possible." Kate felt all eyes on her. Her runes pulsed with light as if responding to Lauren's words. "I did not choose this. Your ritual pulled me here and changed me, yes, but you survived the change," Lauren said intensely. "Thousands of others would have died or gone mad. Your human adaptability, combined with Ashkor's dimensional anchor nature, created something unique. You can push back against the Unmaker's influence. We sensed you doing it at the Shadow Stronghold when you destroyed our stabilizer." Seraphine tensed. "That was a test. You let us destroy it to see what Kate could do." Lauren nodded. "We had to know if the legends were true. If a being could exist between states and resist erasure. Kate Morrison, you are the only weapon that might work against the Unmaker." Before Kate could respond, reality shattered. The dead world lurched as something massive tore through dimensional barriers. Kate looked up and saw tendrils of absolute nothing reaching through the sky. They were not black or white. They were the absence of color and light and existence. The Unmaker's vanguard had arrived. Everyone scattered as the tendrils struck the ground where they had been sitting. The gray rock did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. A perfect sphere of nothing remained where matter used to be. More tendrils reached down from the tearing sky. Ashkor roared and launched into the air, breathing fire at the tendrils. The dragon's flame should have burned anything, but the tendrils absorbed the fire and grew stronger. Kate realized with horror that the Unmaker fed on energy. Every attack made it more powerful. She ran toward one of the tendrils on instinct. When it reached for her, she grabbed it with her bare hands. Her runes exploded with light, and the tendril recoiled like it was burned. Kate felt her humanity draining away with each touch, but the tendril was weakening. Seraphine was at her side immediately. Together, they pushed back against the Unmaker's assault. The elf warrior's magic, combined with Kate's paradox nature, creating a barrier that the void could not cross. But it was exhausting, and Kate felt her body changing faster. Lauren and the other Shadow Princes fought on the other side. Their corruption made them resistant but not immune. One of Lauren's companions moved too slow, and a tendril touched his leg. That part of him simply stopped existing. He screamed as nothingness spread up his body before. Lauren managed to pull him clear. Ashkor dove down and grabbed Kate and Seraphine with his claws. The dragon was wounded. Tendrils had scored across his scales, leaving wounds that did not bleed because the flesh was gone. He flew unsteadily back towards stable reality with Lauren and her remaining companion running behind them on a bridge of shadow. The dead world collapsed behind them as the Unmaker consumed it completely. Kate looked back and saw the gray sphere shrink and vanish as if it never existed. They escaped into dimensional space, and Ashkor struggled to navigate. The dragon was dying. They emerged in a dimension of storms and floating islands. Ashkor crashed more than landed, and Kate felt her connection to the dragon weakening. She crawled to his massive head and pressed her forehead against his scales. Through their bond, she felt his life fading. Lauren knelt beside them. Her expression was grief and resignation. When a dimensional anchor dies, the barriers between realities collapse. The Unmaker will flood through, unchecked. This dimension, and yours and thousands more, will fall within cycles. Kate looked at her hands. Her runes covered her entire body now. She could barely remember what human skin looked like beneath them. She felt Ashkor's thoughts mixing with her own. The dragon showed her one last vision. A way to save him. A way to stabilize the dimensions. Kate could complete her transformation and bind herself to Ashkor permanently. Become a dimensional anchor herself. But it would cost everything. Her humanity. Her memories. Her identity. She would become something entirely new that existed, across all realities at once. Seraphine understood immediately. No, there has to be another way. I will not watch you erase yourself. Kate touched the elf warrior's face gently. You told me once that your people fought with honor and lost. Sometimes survival means sacrifice. Sometimes saving everyone means losing yourself. Lauren spoke quietly. If you do this, you cannot come back. You will be the guardian, the bridge, the threshold. You will exist forever at the boundary between dimensions, keeping the Unmaker at bay. Is that life worth living? Kate thought about Earth, about all the people who never knew this war existed. She thought about the elves and the Shadow Princes and every other species trying to survive. She thought about Seraphine and their bond that went deeper than words. Yes, Kate said firmly. A life spent protecting others is always worth living. She began the ritual that would change everything. The binding ritual had no instruction manual. Kate worked from instinct and the knowledge flowing through her bond with Ashkor. She placed her hands on the dragon's wounds and pushed her runes into his flesh. Pain exploded through both of them as their life forces began to merge. Lauren and Seraphine could only watch. This was beyond magic or corruption. This was two beings from different origins becoming one entity that existed across dimensional barriers. Kate screamed as her human DNA rewrote itself. Her bones became denser. Her blood turned silver. Her eyes shifted to match Ashkor's golden color. But something unexpected happened. Seraphine collapsed as the transformation affected her too. The bond she shared with Kate pulled her into the ritual. The elf warrior began changing as well. Her violet eyes gained flecks of gold. Her runes synchronized with Kate's. She became the anchor to Kate's humanity, even as Kate became something beyond human. The process took hours, or maybe days. Time moved strangely during transformation. When it finally ended, Kate Morrison no longer existed as she had been. The being that rose from the dragon's side was taller and made of starlight and flesh combined. Her armor had fused with her skin. Her hair moved like living energy, but Seraphine's presence in the bond kept the core of who Kate was intact. Memories remained clear. Personality stayed stable. She was changed but not lost. Ashkor stood beside her, fully healed, and their minds were permanently linked. Two consciousnesses in harmony. Lauren stared in awe and fear. You did it. You became the Threshold Guardian. But at what cost? Kate's voice resonated across multiple dimensions when she spoke. The cost was paid willingly. Now, we have a chance to fight back. But I cannot do it alone. We need more forces. More allies. She turned her transformed gaze toward the dimensional barrier that separated this realm from Earth. Her new senses could feel her homeworld beyond the veil. The war against machines still raged there. Humanity was losing ground. But humans were survivors who adapted to any challenge. Kate made a decision that would change both worlds forever. She would open a stable portal to Earth. Not to escape, but to bring reinforcements. Humans who understood what it meant to fight impossible odds. People who would volunteer not because they were summoned, but because they chose to help. Queen. Celestine was summoned to the dimensional nexus Kate had created. The Queen looked at Kate's transformed state with sadness and wonder. You gave up everything, human. Was it worth the price? Kate nodded slowly. Ask me again when we win. Right now, I need your permission to bring humans through. Thousands of them. They will change your world's balance. Some elves will not accept it, but we need their help. The Queen considered carefully. The risk was enormous. Humans were unpredictable and violent. They had no magic, but they had cleverness that made them dangerous. But the alternative was extinction. Bring them. I will deal with my court's objections. Kate focused her new power on the dimensional barrier. Seraphine stood beside her, lending strength through their bond. Together they tore open a controlled portal that led to the exact moment of Kate's original ship destruction. The wormhole that had brought her here could now bring others. Through the portal, Kate could see her old crew. They were dying in the explosion. But she could also send a message backward through time, too, before the jump. She spoke across dimensions directly into the communication system of her ship. Humanity, this is Lieutenant Kate Morrison. I found something worth fighting for on the other side. A war that will reach Earth if we lose. A chance to save two worlds instead of one. Who is with me? The response shocked everyone watching. Not just her crew, but thousands of other human ships picked up the transmission. Military vessels. Colony ships. Civilian volunteers. They all heard Kate's call, and they all answered the same way. Tell us where and when. Humanity does not abandon its own. The portal stabilized, and ships began coming through, hundreds at first, then thousands. Humans of every type emerged into the magical realm with eyes wide and weapons ready. They saw elves and dragons and floating. Islands and immediately started asking questions and taking notes. Kate watched with pride as humanity did what it did. Best, adapt. Within hours, human engineers were studying elf magic and finding ways to combine it with technology. Human soldiers were training alongside the vanguard, learning new tactics. Human doctors were sharing medical knowledge with elf healers. The elvish court was overwhelmed. Queen Celestine maintained order, but barely. Humans were loud and curious and pushy. They did not respect tradition or hierarchy. They wanted to understand everything immediately. It was chaos, but it was productive chaos. Lauren approached Kate with her remaining Shadow Prince companion. We felt your transformation across dimensions. The other Shadow Princes want to join this alliance. We have been running for too long. Maybe with your forces we can actually fight back? Kate welcomed them despite protests from both elves and humans. The Shadow Princes had knowledge of the deeper dimensions where the Unmaker lived. They understood the enemy in ways no one else could. Their corruption was a weapon if used correctly. Over the following weeks, the alliance grew stronger. 3 species that should have been enemies learning to work together. Kate stood at the center as the Threshold Guardian, keeping dimensional barriers stable while forces prepared for the final confrontation. Seraphine never left her side. The elf warrior had become Kate's anchor to identity and purpose. When Kate's memories began to fade, Seraphine would tell stories of Earth and of Kate's human past. When Kate started thinking across too many dimensions at once, Seraphine would ground her with a touch. Their bond had evolved beyond words or even thoughts. They were two parts of one being split across flesh and starlight. Neither complete without the other? Kate did not know if it was love or something beyond love. She only knew that Seraphine mattered more than existence itself. The Unmaker's full assault came without warning. Reality tore open across 1,000 points simultaneously. Tendrils of void poured through, seeking to erase everything. The Alliance met them with coordinated fury. Human ships fired weapons that combined technology and magic. Elf warriors used tactics taught by Kate's vanguard. Shadow princes guided forces through dimensional shortcuts that confused the enemy. And at the center of it all stood Kate with Ashcore coiled around her. She was the Threshold Guardian, and this was her purpose. Kate spread her consciousness across all the battle points simultaneously. She pushed back against erasure with the force of her paradox existence. Where she touched the void, it recoiled. Where she willed reality stayed stable, but the Unmaker was vast beyond comprehension. For every tendril she destroyed, 10 more appeared. Kate felt herself stretching too thin. Her form began to flicker between dimensions. She was losing cohesion. Seraphine's voice cut through the chaos. "You are not alone. We are bonded, Kate Morrison. Use my strength." The elf warrior pressed against Kate's transformed body, and their runes synchronized completely. Power flowed between them in perfect harmony. Seraphine had been changed by the bond into something more than elf. Together, they were stronger than the sum of their parts. Kate gathered every ounce of combined power. She pulled energy from Ashcore. She pulled belief from the humans who had followed her. She pulled determination from the elves defending their home. She pulled desperate hope from the Shadow Princes, seeking redemption. And then she attacked. Kate did not just push back the Unmaker. She invaded its realm. She forced her paradox existence into the deepest dimensions where the void lived. She became a wedge of impossible reality-driven. Into the heart of entropy itself, the Unmaker screamed in a sound that existed beyond hearing. It recoiled from Kate's assault, unable to comprehend something that should not exist. Kate did not destroy it because it could not be destroyed, but she could trap it. She could seal it away using all her power as the threshold. Guardian Kate wove a barrier of crystallized reality around the Unmaker's domain. She locked it in a prison of paradoxes that would take eons to escape. The tendrils withdrew. The void receded. Reality stabilized. Kate collapsed back into the physical dimension, exhausted beyond measure. Seraphine caught her and held her close. They had won, but the cost showed on both their faces. Kate's memories were fading faster now. Parts of her human past disappeared like smoke. Queen Celestine approached with Lauren and human commanders. They looked at Kate with respect and sadness. "You saved us all, Threshold Guardian, but you are losing yourself in the process." Kate smiled weakly. "Seraphine will remember for me." That is enough. In the aftermath, a new era began. Humans established settlements across the elf realm. Technology and magic merged, creating wonders neither species could have achieved alone. The Shadow Princes began the slow process of healing, guided by human doctors and elf mages. Working together, Kate remained at the dimensional threshold, neither fully present nor absent. She could no longer walk among people as she once had. Her form was too unstable, existing partially in multiple dimensions at once. But she could watch. She could guide. She could protect. Seraphine stayed with her always. The elf warrior built a home at the nexus point where Kate anchored reality. Every day, Seraphine would tell Kate stories. Stories of Earth that Kate barely remembered. Stories of their adventures that felt like someone else's memories.